land acknowledgement statement that came through our land acknowledgement project. I'm going to read this for accessibility purposes, but you can find more on our website. We acknowledge the lands and waters now known as Maryland are the home of its first peoples, the Accohonic Indian tribe, the Assateague Peoples tribe, the Cedarville Band of Piscataway Indians, the Choptico Band of Indians, the Lenape tribe, the Nanticoke tribe, the Nassau-Wawash Band of Indians, the Piscataway Conoy tribe, the Piscataway Indian Nation, the Pocomoke Indian Nation, the Susquehannock Indians, the Yagahaney River Band of Shawnee, and tribes in the Chesapeake watershed who have seemingly vanished since the coming of colonialism. We acknowledge that this land is not home to other tribal peoples living here in diaspora. We acknowledge the forced removal of many from the lands and waterways that nurtured them as kin. We acknowledge the degradation that continues to be wrought on our land and waters in pursuit of resources, and we acknowledge the right of the land and waterways to heal so that they can continue to provide food and medicine for all. We acknowledge that it is our collective obligation to pursue policies and practices that respect the land and waters so that our reciprocal relationship with them can be fully restored. Maryland State Arts Council's Equity and Justice statement is that the arts celebrate our state's diversity, connect our shared humanity, and transform individuals and communities. The Maryland State Arts Council and its supporting collaborators are committed to advancing and modeling equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in all aspects of our organizations and across the communities of our state. Maryland State Arts Council and its grantees are committed to embracing equity and non-discrimination regardless of race, religious creed, color, age, gender expression, sexual orientation, class, language, and ability. And the vision is that the Maryland State Arts Council plays an essential role in ensuring every person has access to the transformative power of the arts. And our mission is that the Maryland State Arts Council advances the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all the people of Maryland. Our former strategic plan developed 5 goals. We are at the end of a new strategic planning process that should be premiered soon, but I will read these bolded statements. To increase participation, provide intentional support, build capacity, leverage connections, and bolster Maryland arts. And if you've been here before, you might remember that we like to start all of our meetings by reading these creative meeting actions. We'd love for you to get involved. So if you could just unmute and read one aloud, that would be wonderful.
Celebrate being in the space with other creative people.
Engage with everyone's presence as a gift.
Acknowledge that together we know a lot.
Enter the conversation with curiosity and inquiry.
Share your ideas and trust that it will be heard.
Use I statements.
Focus your language on the task at hand.
Hold one another accountable with care.
Apply yes and. I hear your idea and I'm going to add to it.
Balance speaking and listening.
All right. Good job, everyone. Thank you so much. That was really smooth. All right. Handing it back to Nora.
Thank you everyone for joining in those grounding slides with us. So for today's webinar, we're going to be using this app called Menti. It's a way for you to engage and respond and for me to ask you questions. So if you could go ahead and scan the QR code, you can also go to menti.com and put in the 4-digit code. And Ryan will also drop the link in the chat if you want to click on it there. And once you're in, if you could just give me a thumbs up so that I know most people are in or some people are in. If you can't join, you can still participate in the chat. No worries. All right, looks like we got 4 of us in. Okay, I'll give this like 3 more seconds. All right, so we'll test this out and see if it's working. Just for fun, let us know which county of Maryland you're calling in from. So one of our objectives of the Maryland State Arts Council is to engage artists and creators and organizations from across the state. So we love to see representation from all corners of Maryland. You can go to the link in the chat. You can also go to minty.com and put in the digit code, the number code on the top of the screen. Okay, it's great to see we have representatives from the Eastern Shore, from Central, and from Dorchester, Anne Arundel. Do we have any Western Marylanders? Hopefully they are joining us soon. Okay, awesome. So we'll be using this. Oh yes, we have an Allegheny in the chat. Wonderful. So glad you're here. All right, and let us know, what public art grant are you considering applying for? Is it new artworks, conservation, or you're unsure? And again, if you're not in the app, feel free to let us know in the chat as well. Okay, do we have any conservation folks with us today? Hopefully by the end of the call, we'll have some folks interested in conservation. Okay, great. The unsures and the maybes, we're so glad you're here. That's literally what we're going to talk about today. All right, so let's get into our agenda. So today we're going to do a brief overview of what we consider public art, what kinds of art we can fund through this grant program. We are going to do an overview of the 4 types of funding available. And then we'll talk about the new artworks grant application, the conservation grant application. I will show you like a quick demo of our application software if it's new to you. And then at the end, we will do question and answers. Again, I ask that you save your questions to the end. We put together a lot of information for you, so hopefully we'll answer most as we go. You can put questions into the Minty poll. It actually keeps a queue of them for me so we don't lose track of anyone's question. And these slides and the webinar recording will be made available on our website and on our YouTube channel. So what is public art? So we are working with this definition. This is the Maryland State's definition of public art. You can view this on our glossary, but it's art that is created intentionally for place and space in the public realm. It can be on public or private property. It can be indoors, it can be outdoors, but it needs to be free and it needs to be accessible. This can include expressions of community values, enhancement to the environment. It can raise awareness of unseen narratives. So public art supported by the Public Art Across Maryland grant must have a physical presence and a lasting impact. I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail. So temporary works of art are eligible for this grant. We just want to clarify a bit that it should have a physical presence and it should be installed for an intentional amount of time. So we're asking you to say, like, I'm going to make this thing and it's going to be here for a certain amount of time, and everyone understands when it should be taken down and who's responsible for it. What we want to avoid is a piece of art that gets deteriorated and is like, looks bad after the rain and no one knows whose job it is to clean it up. So temporary things are welcome as long as there's some clarity around how and where and who. So our Public Art Across Maryland, and we call it PAM for short, has 4 types of funding. I'm going to walk you through what those 4 are. So the first bucket is new artworks. The second is conservation. Within new artworks, there are 2 types. The first is planning. Those are for applications up to 10,000. And then there's new artworks projects. Those are for projects up to 30, or grant applications up to 30,000. And likewise for conservation, there are conservation planning grants up to 10 and conservation project grants up to 30. So as we go today, we will be explaining in more detail what the differences are between these 4, and I hope that you leave knowing like what is the best opportunity for you and your project. I'm going to dig into new artworks first. So new artworks is intentionally for work to support work that's new and original. So we're looking for something that's specific, it's new, it hasn't been done before, it's specific and special to the place or space that you're proposing. For planning grants, for new artworks planning grants, the eligible types of funding. So you can use this to cover community engagement. You can use the funding to select an artist, to hire a consultant of any kind, to hire artists to illustrate the work. You can even use this funding for grant writing support if you're looking for additional funds for the implementation phase. I want to note that this is the only grant of the 4 types that an individual artist can apply for. All of the other grants are only available to organizations, and I will explain what that means as we go, but please note this is the only grant type that individual artists are eligible for. So the project grant. So the project grant is designed for a public art that's already designed. You already have your artist. You already know what it's going to look like. You already know the space and the place. All you need is money to pay the artist, to pay for the materials, and of course for the celebration afterwards. And as a reminder, only organizations can apply for this type. It's not required that you have gone through our planning grant process. We're only required that you're ready to go, that you can complete the requirements for this grant. So I want to share some examples of recent public art, new artworks grants that we have funded. This piece is Robert and Roberta by the Devane and Kozar Studio. This is installed downtown Baltimore City. This is in the Hardwood Community Garden by David Issa. This project went through the planning and the project process. And this one was led by Yanji Mendroso, and it is at Coppin State. So there's a wide range of things that you can do. I share these as examples, but please don't consider, it shouldn't limit you and what you want. It's just inspiration. Okay, I'm gonna get into the rules of the grant. And this might be fun or it might be boring, depends on what you think about rules. But in the meantime, if you wanna follow along, you can scan that QR code. I know Ryan put it in the chat already. These are the guidelines, is what we call the guidelines. It's a different word for rules for the grant. So to be eligible for a new artworks grant, as we shared earlier, to be up for the planning grant, you can be an artist or an organization, but for the project grants, you must be an organization. So what does that mean? An independent artist must be artists or a group of people that work together. They must be Maryland residents. They must be like the lead artist in the project. And you can not be enrolled in a credit or degree seeking program. So like you can't be in high school or undergraduate or a degree program at the time of the application. Organizations, you must be one of the following. So a nonprofit that has a designated tax status of 501c3. You can be a nonprofit with a Maryland-based fiscal sponsor. You can be a unit of government that can be, town, state, county, etc. Or you can be like a college or university. So these are the different types of organizations that are eligible to apply. You will notice that we do not accept applications from corporations. So that is something that I want to point out, and that often comes up with artists. Okay, this is new. So for my returning PAM folks this year, I want to note this. For this cycle of funding, which we call FY25, fiscal year 25, you can only submit one grant. So the 4 that we talked about, you can only submit one application. In previous years, you could submit new artworks and a conservation grant simultaneously, but moving forward, you only can submit one grant per cycle. Okay, new artworks eligibility. So the artwork that you're gonna be making for the new artwork, so that you're doing a planning grant or a project grant for new artworks, your artwork that you're proposing or that you're planning must fit our public art definition, which we talked about at the beginning. It must be designed by a Maryland artist. It must be new and original. So this did come up last year. We had a proposal that was gonna recreate a piece of art that was installed at another park, and they were gonna make a second one for a new park. That was an ineligible project. It has to be completely new and original for this space. It can include, but doesn't have to be limited to, it can be a sculpture, it can be mural, it can be mosaic, mixed media, photography, digital works. They can be benches, bike racks, lighting works, etc. So we're pretty open in what it can be. We're looking for you and your artist team to come up with interesting ideas. And again, it can be temporary or permanent. That's up to you. It has to be intended for the public. I'm going to keep going. Publicly accessible. It comes up again and again. This grant is funded through your taxpayers' money. So the residents of Maryland are investing in these projects. So they need to be accessible to the residents of Maryland. It has to meet your local jurisdiction's regulations. So every jurisdiction is different. There's different rules about permitting and right-of-ways and access. So whatever you need, we leave it to you to do that research and work with your town or your county government to ensure you following the local rules of installing public art. Okay, if you do propose a work of art on private property, which is permissible, you just need to explain yourself. How does it benefit the greater public? And I want to note, we'll go into this more, for project grants, you have to have already gone through the community process of engagement. So if you're going to submit a project grant, you need to be able to explain how you engage the community before submitting this grant application. All right, I'm going to keep going. Use of funds. This is how you can spend the money. And again, we will make these slides available to you. You can use the funds. So for new artworks planning, you can use the funds for administrative fees to pay artists honorariums. If you're working with a partner, if they have some partner fees, consultant fees, equipment rentals, online software. So if you want to set up an online portal for artists to submit applications, this grant can cover those fees. And artwork design fees. So if you're, you might be doing a call for 3 artists to submit a design for review, you can pay those artists for their time using this grant application. Okay, project grants. Still new artworks, now we're in projects. The use of funds are different. So if you receive a project fund, you can use that funding to pay your artists, any contractual assistants, installers, fabricators, contractors. If you need to rent a lift, you can pay for rentals. Any material costs associated, you can pay to get a plaque or a sign for your artwork. You need to transport the artwork to the site. That's a permissible. You can use it to pay for insurance, any permitting fees. Overhead is welcome as long as it doesn't exceed 10% of the total grant. And then we highly encourage to do some kind of dedication celebration at the end, and you can use the grant to pay for that celebration as well. Okay, hope you're all still with me. Application prompts. So this is what we're asking you to do to complete the New Artworks Planning Grant. And if you're following along with me on page 8, you will see these prompts. So for a planning grant, it's a 3-question application. These are the 3 things you need to do. You need to describe the planning process and your goals. You need to provide a schedule. And number 3, you need to provide a budget. We don't ask for any attachments. You don't have to provide any artwork samples, just these 3 things. It's really intended to be a pretty simple application to launch your planning process. For the project grant, this is a more involved application. So I'm going to go through this a little bit slower. You need to provide a description. Number 2, you need to describe your community and how you engage that community. So for example, if you're going to do a mural, you need to tell us how that mural design came to be and how you engage the community in development of that design. No, and there's many ways to do that. Just you have to explain what you did. Number 3, you need to explain the prior experience of the team. So if you're working with an artist, a fabricator, a conservator, you're going to tell us a little bit about their experience. Number 4, you're going to provide a project schedule. Number 5, a project budget. And number 6, the maintenance plan. So once this artwork is installed, who's responsible for it? If it gets tagged, if it gets dirty, who is going to take care of that piece? We want to know. You also have to upload 3 attachments for the project grant. So the first attachment is the artwork drawings and location. We'll expand on that momentarily. 2, we want to see samples of the artist's previous work. And 3 are letters of permission. So like we said earlier, if you are installing in a historic district and you need to have the historic preservation sign off on the mural, if you need to have the building owner or the garden space that you're installing this sculpture, we need to have documentation that they said, yes, you can put that piece of art on my space. A brief break. Okay. So let's say, for instance, you have this idea, you want to do a water sculpture. So it's great. This is a seed of an idea. We're excited for you, but it's not ready for you to submit a grant yet. What do you think is missing? Oh, it's going to be in a garden. Essential. We need to know the location. So we ask for that map. We're asking you to let us know, where is that artwork going to end up? Then you need to develop the materials. Who owns the property? What kind of permits do I need to install a water feature? You have down at the bottom here, you have your area where you're going to put the art. And you also have to start thinking about, how is it going to be installed? How is it going to be done safely? In many projects, you need to engage an architect or an engineer to ensure that your sculpture is safe. It's not going to fall over in the next windstorm. Okay, this is great. Still not ready for an application yet. What we're looking for in your application are some sort of specific designs. Okay, so here's an example. We also am going to show you this on the far left. This is a proposal that we received from a previous grantee. In the middle is a digital rendering of what they provided in the grant application. And on the far right is what it actually looks like in real life. So you can tell it's pretty close from the application to execution. This is what we're looking for. Very specific outline colors to what it will actually look like in real life. This is for an artwork commissions project, so it's not funded through this grant, but it's just another example of what a digital rendering can look like. As you see underneath the feather, it talks about the concrete footer, how deep it is, what kind of materials it's made, the dimensions of the work, its setting, where is it going to be located. All of these details, that's what we're looking for in a project grant.
If I can just chime in here, Nora, I want to point out again, the reason we break our opportunities down into planning grants and project grants is to try to give you a little bit of space and money to develop those proposals. It's not common that every artist who might be really good at one thing is great at everything. So just because you can make a thing doesn't mean you can do engineering drawings. You may need to hire help for that, and that's totally acceptable. And that's what the planning funds are for, to help develop this kind of schematic drawings, or maybe pay somebody to make a rendering. Any of those types of extra skills that could be helpful to developing your proposal.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now that you've heard my new artworks spiel, let me know, we can hop back over to our Menti. After hearing that, or any of you who are unsure now know which one you should apply for, or maybe you change which one you think is a better fit for your project. Do we have any of our, the link is in the chat again. Do we have any, no unshures? Okay, I hope that's a good sign. But if you're still not 100%, please save your questions for the end. Okay, great. 9 planning for projects. Excellent. All right, let's keep rolling. Okay, I'm going to do the same kind of overview for the conservation grant. So the conservation is for the preservation of existing public artworks in Maryland or being moved to Maryland. So this is only for works that already exist. For all conservation grants, only organizations are eligible to apply, but we also have planning grants. And these are primarily used to hire a professional conservator to do an assessment of the work to figure out what type of conservation is relevant to the artwork. That's the primary use of these funds. And then for conservation project grants, you can use these funds to pay for that conservation, any materials associated with that. Again, it's not required that you have gone through the planning grant process to receive a project grant from the Maryland State Arts Council. Some examples of conservation works that we have funded in the past. So if you are in Baltimore City, you might be familiar with the whirligig at the Maryland American Visionary Museum that was restored, a reciting and cleaning of the Alexander Calder piece at the BMA. And also the repainting of this nuts and bolts tower, which is like a bridge at an elementary school. So it was looking very dull and dreary, and they restored the colors to be bright and appropriate for a school space. This piece was also restored by Linda De Palma's Redwood Arch.
Can I jump in here to just point out that even though Nora said, correctly, that these grants have to come through an organization, it doesn't preclude an artist from being involved. So if you know an artist or you're an artist yourself who has a piece that could use conservation, please reach out to us or connect with an organization that can help you apply. We deeply encourage, almost require all artists that are living to be involved in the conservation of their work. And we just need an organization to submit the application, but it does not preclude an artist from advocating for themselves throughout that process.
Oh yeah, I love this before and after, because when you see the after, you're like, that's how it should have already looked. But to see what it had become over the years is so dramatic after they were done. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but this is our flow chart to determine which application. If there's any brave soul who's still unsure and you want to raise your hand, and we can walk you through this as an example option right there. But if after this you're still not sure which one you should apply for, you can use this chart to navigate. All right, conservation eligibility. So we're gonna get into the nitty-gritty of the conservation grant. So just like before, an organization has to fit in one of these categories. They either need to be a nonprofit with a Maryland-based fiscal sponsor, a unit of government, or college or university. That is the same as New Artworks. Also, like New Artworks, you only can apply to one public art grant this funding cycle. Okay, sounds familiar, right? The artwork must be publicly accessible. It must be either already located or moved to Maryland to be eligible. And we are looking, we're pretty open as long as it's publicly accessible to sculptures, murals, digital works, benches, etc. But as always, this is a publicly funded project, so we're looking for publicly accessible work. Same as New Artworks, for conservation, any kind of conservation of a work must be within the local jurisdiction. So there often are permits that you need. If you're going to block a road or a sidewalk to do the conservation, you need to work with your local government to get that approved. Okay, all of that is laid out in those documents that Ryan has put in the chat. How can you use the money? So if you're doing a conservation planning grant, you can use it for administrative fees and you can use it for consultation fees. So if you need to hire the original artist to come out and do a review of the work, a structural engineer, a historian, a preservationist, like if you're working on a piece that's protected in this like a historic preservation area, you can use the funds to work through all of those local jurisdiction, as well as creating a report. Usually conservation planning grants, the product at the end is a document that says what needs to be done to restore the work of art. You can do community engagement with these planning funds. You can talk, if there's a local neighborhood association that really wants the work to be conserved, you can do campaigns, listening sessions, public meetings with this fund. You can also use it for collection management. So if you want to do like an inventory of all of the public art in your town or along the trailway, this is something you can do with the funds. Conservation project. So this can be the money to actually do the restoration. You can use it to relocate a piece of work. So maybe it was in a private residence and now they want to move it to a public park. You can use the funding for that. You can use it for the cleaning, waxing, coating, painting, replacing structural components. I know we've funded recently a couple of projects where they needed a new pedestal or a base so that it was safe. Those are all eligible expenses. You can use it to improve landscaping around. I do remember a recent project where the drainage wasn't right, so the water was building up and deteriorating the sculpture. So that was one of the things they were going to fund. Lighting, electrical work, to do new signage. Maybe the piece needs to be put in better context. That's something you can use. And then organizational administration up to 10%. Okay. Do we have any conservation folks still on the call? If you would like to tell us if you are interested in a planning or project grant for conservation. Okay, yes, one planning. We love to see it. Okay, excellent. We're glad you're here. We think this grant is so important. We appreciate you showing up. All right. So what is in the application? So for the conservation planning application, again, it's a simple application, 3 components. Describe what you're going to conserve, what your goals are, why is it important. Number 2, a schedule, and number 3, a budget. That's it. No attachments. For the project grant, is a bit more involved. You're going to, number 1, describe the artwork. Number 2, you're going to talk about what needs to be done, if it needs to be waxed, coated, removed, rebuilt. You're going to let us know who's involved. You're working with a structural engineer and a conservator or the original artist. Let us know who's involved in their experience. And then again, the project schedule and the project budget. For attachments for the project application, you're going to let us know where the artwork is located. We're going to upload photos of the work. We love to see the dirty artwork that you plan to clean. We want that before and after moment. So share with us the close-ups of the peeling paint, the sculpture that needs to be recoated, or the pedestal that's cooling water. Like, let us know what it looks like. We love to see it. And then any letters of permission that are required to do the work. So if it's located in like a Parks and Recreation public park, then you're going to need a letter from the Parks Department that you have permission to conserve that work. All right, we're going to talk about how to actually fill out the application now. On our website, we have a conservation page and a new artworks page. We've separated them out. If you hit that apply here button, it will take you to our application portal. If you're familiar with Maryland State Arts Council grants, we do everything on Smart Simple. If you're new, that's fine. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Give me 1 second to switch my screen here. Okay, Ryan, is it working?
It is.
Awesome. So when you set up a Smart Simple account, your homepage will look something like this. And you're going to be looking for opportunities. Once you log into opportunities, you'll scroll down here to our Public Art Across Maryland grant. And you will, let me see. Okay, public art, we'll do new artworks for example's sake, and it's basically the same. Okay, so you're gonna get your guidelines over here. That's the document we've been reading from, so you can reference that. The first thing you need to fill out is your eligibility. So this is gonna talk about the requirements. You know, are you an organization, independent artist? You need to meet eligibility before you can advance. You're gonna share your contact information, and then you'll get into the project questions. So for instance, if you were gonna do a planning grant, you would click planning, you would write in, you know, maybe you want to request the full 10,000, you can put that there. You're going to fill out your, you have to do a 1 sentence summary of what you're asking for. So you could say like funds will support a mural, you know, the Chesapeake Bay's planning process for a new public artwork located at the intersection of Main and First Street in downtown Chesterton or whatever. You would put a sentence like that, and then you'll answer your questions that we have already talked about. You'll describe your planning, and then once you hit save draft, your schedule button and your budget button will pop up. You'll click on those and then you can fill in, it's like a template. You can fill in your schedule and your budget from there. And I hope I did it right. Brian, can you see that?
Yes.
Great. All right, so if you're gonna do your schedule, so please note up here that you cannot put anything in your schedule that takes place before March. If you are awarded this grant, your project must, anything you want to fund with this grant has to start after March 26, 2024. So the earliest start date you would likely have is April. So you would scroll down here to April, maybe April 1st, and you're gonna do a community engagement session to do, like, let's say the entire month of April. You're going to put together a public art committee, and then you would go here in the notes and say, like, email invitations to, you know, these 5 people to be on the committee. And then you would go to the next thing. What's after you put your committee together? Then you're going to do your community engagement. And you're just going to go through every step. And the panelists are going to be looking for details. So in this notes section, please provide some information about what you plan to do in that community engagement phase. And then you hit save. And you'll go down here and do the same thing for your budget. The budget is broken down into categories, so hopefully that helps you in the planning process. You can hit on these little plus signs, hit the drop down. You know, if you're going to do organizational fees, then you put the amount. Let's say it's 3,000, and then notes could be like administration for community engagement. You do want to include information in your notes for every single line item that you put in. I do want to make a note that in the income, please include the PAM grant request. So if you're requesting $10,000, the amount here should say $10,000. If you have external funding sources, maybe you did like a fundraiser for your community organization, then you would put that other here. And let's say you raised $1,000 from resident donations, and then you can just put, you know, donors from community association in that component, and then you would hit save. All right, so those are the questions for the planning grant. There are no attachments. If you do have to provide your W-9 for, you know, payment processing, your signature here, and then you're gonna go ahead and hit submit. And it's gonna give me a bunch of errors because I didn't complete the application. So it will help you out if you miss a component. It's gonna let you know so you can go back and fix that. Okay, so that is a very quick review of the process. I'm going to switch back to our presentation.
Yeah, I want to take this moment of transition to just address a quick question that came up in the chat. The public art grants are completely separate from the capital grant. The capital grant's to improve a building, and public art is either to create new or conserve existing public art, but they're separate programs.
Okay, so we're gonna keep on scrolling. We're gonna get to the question and answer. I'm gonna go through this part a little bit faster because I want to have time for questions. What happens after you submit your grant? We use a grant review process. We're gonna do another webinar that goes into this in detail at the end of, I think it's in November, but essentially there's round 1, there's round 2. We use a rubric to score applications. The panelists score your application. And I do want to note that the Maryland State Arts staff, so myself and Ryan, we don't score. We're just here to help you. We're here to be your advocates. I want to show you what these rubrics look like. Hopefully. There we go. Okay, like I said, I'm going to do a webinar later this fall that goes into how these work and how you can get how your grants will be evaluated and earn points. So please join us for that. But I do want to bring these to your attention. So for every question that you answer, your grant will be scored on a rubric like this one. You'll be assigned points for your answer. December 19th. All applications are due December 19th. So go ahead and mark that on your calendar. If you are awarded, you will be notified March 2025. you will be sent a grant agreement form through Smart Simple, and it takes about 8 weeks to sign in your grant agreement. We do have more resources for you. I'm available to answer your questions. You can use my email. These slides will be posted. We also have past webinars saved on our website, like Public Art 101, for instance. If you are looking to select an artist, these are some websites that are available to posting calls for artists. So how do you start? First and foremost, please read the guidelines. I gave you a big picture overview today. We ask that you read them yourself. And then you need to set up an account in Smart Simple. You get to have us more this fall. We have 5 more webinars coming up to help you with your process. You can follow this QR code or go to the Maryland State Arts Council's Eventbrite. You can register for one of the next 5. The legal one is not yet up on the Eventbrite, but the rest are. If you want us to read your grant and give you feedback, you can do so by following this QR code to a Google form. You can submit that. If you want any feedback, you need to submit that by December 2nd.